Okay, what's going on, people? We are back once again with a new video, Conscious Approach channel. Appreciate you for tuning in. My name is JV Wins. That, as usual, is my good buddy Dogon SS to talk about this week's garden variety of social commentary. Before we get into this week's video, like always, I want to start this video off by saying if you like the commentary of this video or if you appreciate any of the commentary on this channel and you have not already done so, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can be a part of the tribe. We are growing the community, and thus far we have our preliminary goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers. And it's been an organic experience so far, but we are looking to up the ante and increase everything tenfold as we move on into the future, definitely into the new year. So we couldn't do this without your support. We appreciate everybody who participates, who comments, who likes the videos, and who subscribes. But to anyone who might catch wind of what we do here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so we can get those numbers up. We want to go ahead and get served up on that YouTube algorithm so that more people can catch what we got going on the conscious approach side of things. So always want to get that out of the way before we get started with the video. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. First, we're going to talk about an interesting thing that we saw on Drink Champs. Drink Champs is a program that we have referenced on this channel a couple times before. They tend to get people on there who say interesting things, and this particular clip is no exception. So if you're watching this video, the guy on the left there is a hip-hop star named Murda Mook. He was a guest on Drink Champs. And another individual who we have referenced on this channel several times before, Amber Rose, who you see there on the right, was on that same episode of Drink Champs. And, somehow, some way, throughout their candid conversation, the subject of having no talent being the new talent was brought up. Essentially, what Murda Mook was getting at was, in this day and age, in today's current climate and society, it pays probably more so to be talentless than to have talent. He's essentially saying that having no talent is the new talent. And, women got brought into his diatribe when referencing the idea that having no talent is the new talent. And Amber Rose had not necessarily a contention to that, but she wanted some clarification on Murda Mook's part in terms of, whether you really think that this is an issue or why do you think it is that women with no talent can still get on. So that was the part of this that I wanted to touch on because I thought that was the most interesting part of that whole entire episode. When he, when he was talking about having no talent being the new talent. So we're going to go ahead and play a short snippet of what Murda Mook had to say with some contributions from Amber Rose as well. And it will obviously talk about that whole exchange once we watch the entire clip. So it shouldn't be too bad, not too long, but it's some good stuff. So we'll go ahead and play it and see what they had to say. And then we'll talk about what they had to say.
That's a fact, though.
Having no talent is the new talent. I gotta throw my
Why niggas getting famous just because they views piling? We'll get all the views. Violence, stupid new challenge, whole lot of ignorant dudes on the new
hacking algorithm, however you
chicks
can.
getting booked for 2,000 because they posted nude style. And think about it, having no talent, that's the new talent. I saw a bitch on red carpet. I said, "Tell me what you do." She said, "I'm pretty. I pierce my clit, my titties, my belly button too. I twerk for the gram. My videos get a hella bunch of views." That's very fucking cool, but tell me what you do. It's disgusting. Hoes winning be the image they pumping. Bitches getting famous, so famous niggas they fucking. But it's the nigga fault they getting caught. End of discussion. You can't blame the hoes. At the end of the day, them bitches is hustling, man. That was just quick something, but like that's the real shit though. So when you're not consistent, but when you're not consistent and you be like, oh, I'm better than this person or better than that person.
Let me ask you a question.
Do some shots.
No. Let me ask you a question.
That's right. She's guest host today. I forgot.
But what's the problem?
As far as what? I like the way you said that too, like confrontation.
Yes, I like it.
It's about to be a battle.
What's the problem?
Well, we good. No, I was. What do you mean? I'm from Harlem.
No, I'm saying, but what's the problem?
Nothing. I ain't have a problem with none of that shit. I just report the news.
Okay, but you just freestyling.
I just having no talent.
But
the
do you
new
believe
talent.
it?
As having no talent is the new talent?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but is it a problem?
Is it a problem?
Yeah. Like, do you feel some type of way?
No, it's because I don't got nothing to do with me. It's just what I see.
Do we make some noise for
Yeah,
that?
but no, but I'm
But
saying
if-
like,
Hold on. Hold on.
But
what
if
I'm
you think
saying
about it, right? It's
but
a
I'm saying,
talent
like-
in itself, though. If having no talent is a talent, that's some talent. Now you're talented. Like you talented at not being talented.
That
It's
became a
kinda-
talent. Right.
That became a talent.
but like,
It's
who do you
looking in the
blame
mirror.
for that?
Blame?
That's
Yeah.
society's thing.
Like, who do you blame for that? Like,
Yeah.
is it the girl's problem or is it the consumer?
Oh, this is not even just about
It's the
females,
consumer.
guys. That was just the woman thing that I used. That was just one aspect.
But I
of it.
just feel like guys should not like just never talk about women
as far as
everything. Like it should never be a conversation.
you said, talk about them.
Yeah, like as far as like okay, let's say like me, Kim Kardashian, Jada, Ari. Like it should never be a conversation amongst men because it's like you have to then blame the consumer, right? Because these girls, us, are like known as like not having talent, but like we make a lot of money.
Well, no,
Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of it. I think that last part right there kind of sent it home. I don't want to put words into Amber Rose's mouth, but I'm pretty sure that when she talks about the consumer, she's talking about men as consumers of that whole dynamic. You know, talking about chicks on social media who make a lot of money and whatnot. When she is referencing consumers, she was being nondescript, but I feel comfortable saying that she was talking about guys being those consumers, men being those consumers. So you know, there's plenty to unpack there. I don't know if you had any, opinion one way or the other on what either one of them had to say when it comes to, having no talent being the new talent, especially when it comes to, this new culture and this new society and, how women get on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would like to say that first off, shout out to Murda Mook. I don't know where they dusted him off at and found him at, but it was pleasant to see him recently. To hear his little soliloquy, his little handful of bars he presented, that was also it's kind of cool. I feel like he should have cut it off a little sooner. I think I would have had a little bit more punch into it. But as far as what he was saying, it's an observation we've all made. So I think we pretty much all notice, herself included, that it doesn't require as much talent nowadays to air quote get on as it used to be in the past. So with that, I agree with. I don't have any problems with what he was saying there. When it comes to what Amber Rose was saying, as far as blaming the consumers of said talentless people, I also agree that there's consumers that are eating it up, but at the same time, I don't think A, Murda Mook, or B, Amber Rose hit on exactly what is going on here. This is a phenomenon that has many angles to it. We'll tackle some of them here, I'm sure. But just option A and option B, I still don't feel as though that they were both coming from a bias and they weren't looking at the overarching umbrella that's causing this phenomenon to occur in the first place. So Mook, just being a guy who comes from the situation where he had to grind through battle raps, through CDs, DVDs, back in the days where, you had to get on rapping through DVDs, going to A&R offices and all that other stuff. So he came from an era where you had to be talented in order to air quote get on. And so he's voicing his opinion from these new people nowadays who aren't as talented as he was when he was trying to really get on. And I would tend to agree with that. And so he's coming from that angle. And Rose is coming from the angle of being a talentless person who made it. So she's defending her stance there. So that's why they both, to me, have narrow points of views of this phenomenon that's going on. they're both arguing from a personal experience, but not overall what's really happening with this scenario. So initial takes there. How about you, sir? Do you agree with Mrs. Rose here or Mr. Mook?
I agree with both of them. I agree more with Amber Rose, though, ironically. First off, I will say Nori is Nori Nori, and this is off topic, but I just still want to say it. Nori is one of those people to me who is funny without trying to be funny.
He a messy
Like
person.
his face, yeah, like his facial expressions and his comedic timing on the stuff that he be saying on that show is spot on. And he's not even trying to do any of that. It's just a natural part of his
Yeah, he's just
personality.
messy as
Which
hell. That's what it is.
Yeah, which I admire about him. I think he has latent comedic talent in that regard. And so even though he will bring people on and kind of give them the floor to speak their piece, he's still kind of the heartbeat of that show. So and I commend Nori because he comes from our generation and he's one of the few people who has entered into that podcast space and is doing it well.
Yeah.
Which is something that I can't say for most of these people who try to do the same thing. When it comes to Murda Mook, yeah, he kind of went rapper mode halfway through his diatribe. He started like actually, putting bars into what he was saying. But I get the essence of where he's coming from. See, a lot of this stuff is a generational observation. So Mook, I believe, is like at least around our age or maybe a little older. He comes from a generation, as you said, in which you had to show and prove. So if you had nothing to contribute talent wise, the chances of you becoming successful were not that great unless you just so happen to be backed by a machine within the music industry who wanted to pump you up and put you out there for reasons other than your music or your talent in most cases. So I get a lot of what he's saying, but I think the heart of what he was getting at was the sexual marketplace. I think that was the heart of what he was trying to get at. How effective he was, we can debate that for sure, but I think that was at the heart of what he was trying to get. He didn't really start to catch steam until he started talking about the women and started talking about how, chicks, he asked a chick on the red carpet, what does he do? And the chick responded, well, I'm pretty. And women getting on because they have certain piercings or their body looks a certain kind of way or they're shaking it on the gram and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like that was at the essence of what he was talking about because I think that that's the area, in my opinion, probably the one area of modern culture in which you can most clearly observe the advent of having no talent being inconsequential to whether you can become successful is when it comes to the sexual marketplace. I still think that there are pockets of modern society where having talent is better than not having talent. Now, is it disintegrating as we progress into the future? Yes. So in movies, music, entertainment, and all of that kind of stuff, is it becoming even less common for there to be a need for talent in order for you to be successful? Sure. But I think that even in those respective spaces, having talent does you more good than not. But I think when it comes to the sexual marketplace and how a lot of women can essentially propagate their sex appeal in just the very sake of their existence alone and become huge successes, that's the one area of modern society where you most evidently see this advent of having no talent being inconsequential towards success. And I think that was what Mook was trying to get at. And so from that standpoint, I don't agree or disagree. I just think he was kind of stating the obvious. He could have done a more effective job of doing so, sure, but I think that was at the heart of what he was getting at. But I think it was Amber Rose's response to what he said that more men in particular need to pay attention to, because it's men's fault that the sexual marketplace exists in the first place. Now, there's always, from an historical standpoint, been a proliferated sexual marketplace when it comes to the sexual marketplace in the traditional sense. Things like escorting and prostitution. But now what we have going on is women who get to just become rich because they can, put their face and their body on social media apps and various social networks. So things like OnlyFans and Snapchat and Instagram was actually the original inception of this. uh, Women's ability to get on these platforms and essentially do nothing but be themselves and post pics of themselves, videos, things of that nature, wearing certain outfits, or just like I said, merely for the sake of their existence. I think that there is pushback in certain lanes of the manosphere and in certain other recesses of society towards that dynamic, because people are looking at that kind of stuff and saying, why do women who have the gumption to do this kind of stuff get to become famous and financially free and all this kind of stuff by not actually contributing anything to society other than just kind of looking good?
Mhm.
And Amber Rose's response to Murda Mook was, whose fault is that? Or is it a problem? And if women like us are truly a problem, then why is it that we continue to do this and get money? And the answer is because men continue to fund the beast. So, and from that standpoint, I kind of feel like Amber Rose was spot on with that. But we've talked about this kind of stuff before, and not much of it is going to change until a lot of these guys wake up and realize that they exacerbate these issues by feeding these various beasts. I I'm not trying to directly compare women to animals, but if you try to analogize it in such a way that might resonate with more people, like if you have a stray animal who's
Mhm.
like walking around your neighborhood, and this animal's a stray and it has nowhere to go and it's just kind of walking around aimlessly with no direction,
Mhm.
and you decide one day that you're going to give the animal, let's say it's a dog, and you decide one day you're going to put a bowl of food and a bowl of water outside your front door because you feel some type of way about feeding the dog and giving the dog sustenance, and the dog takes advantage of that. Well, let's say you don't do it every day, but ever so often that dog is going to remember that, and the dog is going to see whether you're going to do it again. Now, the more often that you do this, the more often that dog is going to come around. Now, if you're doing this every day, that dog eventually is going to be waiting at your doorstep each and every day, looking for that food and sustenance. Not because the dog is saying, I'm not doing anything to earn this, but I think as as animals, as creatures of habit, and it's a part of human nature, much so like animals who aren't even human. When you get accustomed to certain behaviors and norms and treatment, you're going to gravitate towards that, especially when you realize that there's no penalty to be paid. So men today, to bring it home to the point about this video and my initial thoughts about Murda Mook and Amber Rose, women are realizing that they can make huge gains in modern society just by existing in the world and not contributing anything. And they're accustomed to that treatment because men afford them with the ability to do so, or at least that's how I see it. So I think it's a natural propensity for humans, much less women, to realize that they are being rewarded for something. And they're not going to necessarily conceptualize whether they're contributing anything to get the reward. They're just going to see that if I do A, I will receive B. So all you guys out there who are creating ways for these women to get $10,000 a month just by streaming on OnlyFans, or women who get to be social media influencers because all you dudes out here are liking all of their pics and their videos and commenting on their pages, serving these algorithms up so that these women can become rich and famous, essentially off of doing nothing but merely existing. If you perceive this to be a problem, you have no one to blame but yourselves for this being an issue. And so until you dial it back, it's going to be continue to become an issue. Now, obviously, that's a surface level take. There's deeper meanings behind a lot of this, to be sure, but just kind of tackling this from the surface, those were my initial thoughts on where a lot of this comes from. You have to stop feeding the beast. If you don't want the dog to show up on your front porch every day, don't put water in a bowl of food out in front of your doorstep. But the more you spend your money subscribing to these pages, these women don't care about you. They don't want to meet you unless you're rich enough to fly them out. They don't care about who you are. All they care is that you're paying that subscription each month. And you're getting nothing intrinsic in return, and yet you're capitulating to the dynamic anyway. And this is happening in droves. We talked about, before we went live on this video, how much more weird society is becoming with each and every year and each and every generation, where this is becoming more normal and commonplace. Low self-esteem, no confidence, no social skills having men who are resorting to these various outlets to get some kind of affirmation from women because they can't get it off the muscle. And women are realizing it and seeing that this is all they have to do in order to get on and get whatever it is that they want: rich, famous, both, financial freedom, access to quote unquote high value men, however you choose to define what high value means. This is all a part of it, but none of it exists if men don't fund it. So men just got to stop funding it. And I think Amber Rose's point, even though she wasn't the best at articulating it, is as long as y'all men, you dudes out here keep funding it, we're going to keep doing it. And from that standpoint, I don't think that she was necessarily wrong. But is Mook correct in that it's a talentless? It's an issue of the talentless still getting on despite being talented. I mean, despite being talentless. Yeah, he was right with that. But she's also right when she says, "Well, if you don't like it, do something about it." And not enough guys are willing to do something about it.
Well, I agree with that, but I would say that this problem it's a systemic problem. So this isn't something, and I agree with you that men need to stop, but if they're not aware that they're sick, then they're not going to change this behavior. And how are they getting sick? So what's the one that kills you and you can't even smell it? Carbon monoxide? Is that the one?
Yeah.
So if let's say that men, humans in general, all right, one of the base animalistic things that we have is sexuality, period. And if one is not under control of their sexuality, then they're doomed to do God knows what. And what we're witnessing right now in modern society is God knows what. And, from pansexual to that and this, everybody's just doing whatever. Pornography run rampant, you name it. And so when people aren't aware that they're under attack, see, I personally believe that corporate interests and oligarchical powers, all right, have an interest in making sure that people stay off balance. And the easiest way to get a population of people out of balance is tackling their sexuality. And so if you can confuse someone's sexuality, whether they're heterosexual, homosexual, whatever, if you confuse it, then they struggle to get other things done. So, for instance, if you want to look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all right, when it comes to sexuality and stuff like reproduction, all right, that's like a base type of thing. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you can't get the base things achieved, good luck achieving the other stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, the tenet of the hierarchy of needs is that it's sequential. So you have to achieve the bottom row before you can progress to and then you can't reach self-actualization, which is the top need, without achieving the ones below. Yeah.
Right. And if you're not trained, see, humans are animals, as you mentioned. So, like animals, they need to be trained in order to be domesticated and civilized. And so, if we're not training humans on how to conduct sexuality appropriately, well, then they'll be shitting in the house. Excuse me, French. And so, I've been shitting in the houses for as long as I was born. So it must be natural. Oh, it's natural to shit anywhere you find it. But there's sanitary ways of handling your bowel movements so you don't always have shit in the house. And so society has targeted people sexuality, and now we have everybody run amok when it comes to, whatever. It's no coincidence that with all of this liberal stuff that's been going on and all these liberal things that's been pushed in school, targeting sexuality, that now we have such soft people, in the sense of everybody's triggered, everybody's offended, nobody's taking care of responsibilities anymore. There's no accountability going on, because how could you take care of all of these other things if you don't have a discipline? And one of the strongest disciplines one should have is sexual discipline. And that's what everybody has been cultivated to not have. And so when people have been getting bombarded with sex, because again, the reason why sex sells is because it's the base animal thing. It's one of the first things that get triggered in people. And so when people were too young enough to talk, they've been bombarded by sexual manipulation. And so with these people, they grew up and they're trying to actualize, instead of actualizing discipline and other things, they're trying to actualize the sexual mind control that they've been bombarded with since they were kids. So this is where the carbon monoxide comes from. If you try to tell these people to get out of that house because it's dangerous, like as you're telling them, they going, I can't smell nothing. What you mean? Hey, bro, hey, there's a leak in there. I just know it. And then they're telling you, I don't see nothing. I don't smell nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're just going to power through life. What is going to end up happening with society is that they're going to stay in this house full of carbon monoxide. And right now we're witnessing the deterioration of families, deterioration of education, intellect, attention. There's a whole bunch of things that are deteriorating, and it's due to all of the various stimuli that everybody has been absorbing since they were too young to remember. So by coming to, and I agree with you, but by coming to people at the end of the road and telling them that to change certain behaviors, there's a lot of steps that they have to correct first, and a lot of things they would have to acknowledge first before they're able to not subscribe to the next OnlyFans page. And so this is a deep rooted issue for humans in general. Now, when it comes to men's sexuality, has been targeted, and especially if they're in our cohort and below, there was too much access to pornography. And so if sexuality is at the base bottom level, and then they watch so much of that stuff and they just keep cranking it out one after the next, whatever. That's why we have the involuntarily celibate levels that we have, is because of this access, I would argue. And so with all of this pornography, with all of this various stimuli, they don't know what else to do. It's not like they're getting laid, so I'm gonna like this picture. It's not like they're getting laid, so I'm gonna text somebody in the chat, and hopefully she recognizes it. Oh, she didn't recognize it? Let me send her a $5 chat. And so this is what's happening in society. So now it's like, oh, okay, well, we're looking at the very last dominoes, which rightfully so. It's the easiest thing to observe. And then we're looking at all of this mess and then this chaos, and we're like, yo, get it together, guys. But so many of them are lost. So they would put on an Amber Rose. If your sexuality is confused, I would also argue that there's other levels of common sense and things that are also confused. So that's why your Tekashi 6ix9ines get on, and your whatever people get on, because people don't have the same level of intellect they used to have. Critical thinking, because critical thinking has also been targeted. So to tie it all in a nice bow, yes, Murda Mook does have a point, as I agree with earlier. and his was more of an, just an observation for sure. Amber Rose has a point here as well, but that's why I was saying that I believe there's an overarching umbrella and various components that are playing into the final result that we see, as in spineless men who
Yeah.
who entertain foolishness because they don't have a solid firm base, and that the reason why they don't have a solid firm base is because they're confused sexually, even if they're heterosexual. So that's how I feel about
Yeah.
this whole scenario here.
Yeah, I agree 1000% with that. But it isn't just sexual confusion. Well, you brought up you brought up other examples. It's common sense confusion, critical thinking confusion, intelligence confusion. Intellect is the word that you use. All of that is being data mined, if you will. And the thing is, like, okay, so what does talent see? In my opinion, talent denotes a standard.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, whenever we start talking about people who have this level of talent or that level of talent, we're denoting a particular standard with respect to whatever it is that you're talking about, and it's something that you can see. So it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be an entertainer. It doesn't have to be a hip hop person. It doesn't have to be an athlete. It can be an engineer, right? It can be an artist. It can be an architect. And the thing about these individuals is there's a discernible difference between what they can do and what others who can't do what they do look like. And so what denotes talent to me is also a baseline level of standards. And so it comes as no coincidence to me that we're talking about, in this particular context with this particular topic, talentless people still being able to get on despite not having talent. Well, we're dealing with a culture that is increasingly not caring about standards. And so if you don't care about standards, why would you care about talent? Because when we're talking about talent, it also denotes a standard. A talented singer is going to have a baseline standard for how their talent is represented. And it's the same thing everywhere else. I brought up engineers, architects, people in people in STEM applications, people in IT, whatever field you want to bring up, lawyers, doctors, people who work in medicine, people who work in finance and accounting. There's a certain standard that is inherent in these individuals and the talent that they possess. And so, if we're talking about a society that doesn't care about whether you're talented or not, and will still continue to feed the beast and put you on because we're so incredibly dumbed down, thanks to all the stimuli that we become exposed to on a daily basis, then it stands to reason that there is a commonality between that and the fact that as a culture we don't care about standards. Period. And I would argue that we don't. And I'm not trying to be a fuddy duddy, you know every now and again, I don't mind the occasional mindless piece of entertainment myself. But what we have done is we have started to transplant mindless entertainment for talent. So, in other words, what we'll start doing is we'll start calling people like 6ix9ine and Amber Rose talented, and they're actually not. So not only are people's sexual identity being confused and their common sense being confused and their intellect being confused, but the very conceptualization of basic notions like talent are also being confused. So you're looking at people who have no talent and you're saying, wow, they have 1 million followers. They must therefore be talented. No, they're not. They're just taking advantage of a system that doesn't require standards. And when you're in a system that doesn't require standards, you cannot have talent and get on. We can argue until the cows come home how beneficial that is. I would argue it's not the best thing in the world. But as you said, the impetus of it, we can find the origins of it. They're more deeply rooted than just simply stating that, people don't have talent, but they're still getting on. There's reasons for why these things are taking place. But when you are dealing with a culture that is subservient and doesn't care about standards, then of course people with no talent can get on, because in order to care about talent, you'd have to have standards. And we don't have standards. Therefore, we don't care about whether you have talent or not. So, Amber Rose, who I would say is talentless, the Kardashians, who I would say collectively are talentless. You know, 6ix9ine is another person who I would say is talentless. Any of these other content creators on YouTube and whatnot. Hell, I would even suggest that these gamers on Twitch encompass more talent than some of these social media influencers, because at least they are willing to dedicate enough time to being good at playing the damn video game. Now, there's issues with video gaming and all that stuff because that funnels into this whole incel sexual identity issue that we got going on with these dudes out here, running rampant. But nevertheless, at least they contribute more to society than some of these social media influencers and these other people who can just become self-actualized in the monetary and fame perspective, merely because they are able to take advantage of you know a culture and society as we see it before our very eyes today, that doesn't care necessarily about things such as standards and talent. And so, yeah, um, until that baseline hierarchy of need gets satisfied, then the upper echelons of that particular pyramid aren't going to be met. And yeah, there's just a lot of stray dogs running around the streets being fed steak and being given water, even though they're strays and don't deserve it otherwise. But I guess, I feel as though from the standpoint of this channel and the way that we speak on stuff like this, um, and the way that I can say both Murda Mook and Amber Rose have points. In my opinion, Amber Rose had a deeper point because I like to get to the progenitors of certain behaviors. And in this particular context, I think men is the progenation of this particular issue. All I can do is just from this particular standpoint say, hey man, a lot of y'all are already at the point where you have reached a certain age in which certain behaviors are already embedded in your brains. It's going to take a lot of therapy to undo all of those layers of psychosis. But in the meantime, I will say y'all need to get off the OnlyFans, stop liking and subscribing to so many of these pics, and get out there in the world and try to do things in person. And it's easier said than done for all of the things that you laid out, and all of that stuff is 100% plausible. But damn, it breaks my heart to see so much of this stuff running rampant so badly. And I'm not a cure-all. I can't sprinkle fairy dust on everybody and allow us men in particular to dial it back so that these chicks aren't making $100,000 a month just because they got an OnlyFans page. All I can say is, hey, get off there. Get rid of some of those subscriptions, work on it, go to therapy. Try to peel back some of these layers and understand the reasons for why you think that you have to do these things, so that eventually you can realize you don't actually have to do it. But until more of that happens, I guess we can just continue to sit back and watch the world go by as the talentless continue to get on, despite the fact that they don't have talent.
Well, when we were kids, and I agree with you, but and when we were kids and we were growing up and we were doing math, and we busting out scientific calculators, we're busting out calculators, and we're trying to do our work through the calculators, and the teachers hated it. They said, hey, figure it out without the calculator. At the time, I was like, what do you mean? There's a machine here that does it for me, so why do I need to do it? And their argument was, you have to use your brain. This thing is doing it for you, so you're not thinking when you're just inputting numbers. So do it yourself. Use the calculator to check your work. It bothered the hell out of me, but I followed the process. Then when we got older, for instance, Google. Now, I used to have to spell things out. I would spell things out. I used to use a dictionary. Then Google came around. It was like, did you mean silhouette? And I was like, yeah, I meant silhouette. Now when I'm typing stuff, and I'm guilty of this too. Now when I'm typing stuff, I'm like, how the hell do you spell that? I don't know. Google will figure it out. Even when I'm in Microsoft Word, I'm writing documents. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Spell check.
Yeah, nah. I was like,
Yeah.
is this an I before the E situation, or is this an E or an I? I don't know. I'm gonna just spell it. And then they corrected me, and I'm like, yep, I was wrong. And I knew I was gonna be wrong. Why? Because I don't take the time out to use those areas of my brain. Now, this is coming from now previous generations. Now, they had to do a lot more stuff, right? I mean, they were pretty much living in the Flintstones era compared to what's going on now. And so they had to do a lot of things mechanically, and they had to use areas of their brain to actually get those things fired up and going. With all the advents of smartphones and all of these devices and things that's going on that's doing a lot of stuff for a lot of people, the younger generation has grown up not using certain areas of their brains. And since they're not using certain areas of those brains of their brain, then those areas become atrophied. And then you get this dragging the feet, slow to talk, depressed generation that's coming up nowadays. And when you talk to all these kids, they all have the same monotone pitch. You'll get something that's alive and that's talking. But I'm running into and seeing a lot of children that are not motivated, don't care, seem entitled. All right. But even though they don't even come from good circumstances, some of them, but they still have this sense of entitlement. They don't want to use areas of their brain. Something will figure it out for me type of mentality. And then when you have all of those things going on, there's this, and then there's a lack of personal conversations that's going on, lack of we brought up last week that you had to used to have to really holler at girls. You actually had to call the people's house and talk, and either the mom or the dad would answer the phone. Hey, can I talk to Tasha, please? And then you had to do all of that. There's none of that anymore. Not with DMs, not with all these things that make life air quote easier. All of these technologies that's making life easier is making people worse, because now they don't have to use areas of their brain. They don't have to use certain characteristics that would make them sharper. So then you get people who would have been talented back in the day, but they don't seem to be talented now. They are the talent now because they're the most talented people of the talentless people that's coming up, if this is making sense. So the kids and the people that are sitting here and watching this, they are in a space where they look at these people as role models, because they're those people that are talentless are actually using areas of the brain that these people can't. That's why we'll sit here and look at these people and go, what's going on here? People from an older generation, like Murda Mook or Amber Rose, and go, well, yeah, we're talentless. Amber Rose says, yeah, we're talentless, but we still got on. Whose fault is that? It's the consumers who can't recognize real talent, because we can recognize it. That's why we call it out. But the consumers who don't know what real talent is, because they've been using all types of automation and things like that, not using areas of their brain to spark critical thinking or common sense. So then these goofballs get on. So what we're witnessing right now, and people love to holler about how great technology is. The better the technology is getting, the dumber the people are getting. So that's why we have talentless people that are on at this point. So, and the people that are actually talented, the people that actually have critical thoughts and things to say of that nature or whatever, they're unicorns. And, it's a dying breed, honestly. So I'm not sharting on the new generation. It's not their fault. They didn't know what was going on. And it's not my fault either that I don't know how to do certain things that my ancestors did, because they didn't have a smartphone or a laptop or computer programs to write documents. They used typewriters. They had to use various areas of their brains. So, yeah, man, I think this is the perfect storm that we're witnessing, and that the part that's obvious and that's on display is a talentless woman with piercings on a red carpet somewhere, where back in the day where people actually used to use areas of their brain, and the fans had to use areas of their brain to actually recognize a certain level of talent. So that's what I'm saying. It's a concert of things that are, in my opinion, that contribute to this phenomenon that we're witnessing nowadays. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I hear all of that. I just think it's too bad. And yeah, everything always has an unintended consequence. Even these like when they were developing these social media networks, they thought that they were creating something that was going to be beneficial to the world, but it certainly had various unintended consequences. And when you throw capitalism and commercialization into that, no one's going to care about the unintended consequences. They're just going to care about the benefits that they can reap from it. But yeah, it is making people worse. It's just I hear far too often from men in particular who are capable of critical thought who say, I don't know what's going on out here. I can't seem to get anywhere with these women or any kind of thing because I'm dealing with all of this smoke screen. And routinely, when I have conversations with these guys about this stuff, they bring up things like this. They bring up stuff like OnlyFans and Instagram modeling and influencers and paid to hire and all of this they bring it up. I'm not making this up. They bring this up. It's not like I coerce it out of them. They bring it up. And so that's why I say there must be a large enough population of men out here who are trying to get this all figured out, who are wondering, how do we figure it out? And so all I can say is spread the message. Tell these other guys out here to just get off of these platforms. You'd be amazed at how much things can change. Excuse me. Without going down the rabbit hole on some of the more systemic issues. But yeah, it is what it is. I think they both have a point there.
No, you good.
Some went down the wrong pipe.
That's all good. Hey, well, I'll tell y'all this in the meanwhile, my dog JV wins. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscriptions. Okay. All right. We're trying to hit 100K nowadays. You know what I'm saying? So guys, hit that like button. All right. Tell a friend. Let them know that we're over here spitting facts. All right, on the weekly here at the Conscious Pros live streams. All right. So greatly appreciate you guys for watching, and let us know what you guys think here in the comment section. All right, we had a bit of a spill there when it came to what Amber Rose and Murda Mook had to say. But what do you guys think? What do you guys believe is the progeniting behavior for talentless people all of a sudden being talented? Air quotes. So
yeah, I'd say, fella, stop feeding the beast. That's what I'll say. That's what I'd say. All right, so that was a pretty good topic. We'll go ahead and move on from there.